So I'm starting off. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It was a very amazing session with Jagdeep sir discussing about how companies like Nestle have been putting their energy in understanding alternative protein, in creating new avenues and pushing more R&D into this domain. And thanks to sir, we have been able to get a brief perspective about how the whole say shift from hardcore companies to becoming more customer-centric companies is happening. It gives us a brief understanding. But in this whole journey, we should not forget that more startups and more innovations are required to match the demands when it comes to how these companies will grow and be successful, and how consumer-centric products will be launched in the coming years. Discussing on these, I have with me today Natalie. She is one of the project managers at BRINC. And just to give you a brief about BRINC, BRINC has been one of the best stakeholders to us, not from the perspective of an investor, of an innovator, or sorry, an incubator, but also a guide in this journey. We started the journey with BRINC back in 2021. These were the early days of how we were developing. And as a founder, I do feel that such an exposure is required, because this is a very positive feedback. I never gave it to BRINC, but I take this opportunity to discuss it today. When we started our association with BRINC, we had no understanding how to speak to investors, how to create our slides, what should be corrected, what should be our body languages. And personally, I was not very positive about the whole thought process of incubation and accelerators. But specifically post BRINC, and this is specifically to define about BRINC because I have seen other programs also. The exposure that BRINC has given us, it not only helped us understand how to put ourselves at the right place at the right time, but also how to present ourselves. There has been a lot of changes internally, externally, but I do give a credit to all my stakeholders, and BRINC is one of them. And with this, I share with you Natalie. She will be discussing about the importance of incubations, accelerators, and how alternative protein is behaving. So over to you, Natalie. I would love you to give a brief about yourself and BRINC, and then we can start with the Q&A.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for those kind words, Sid. I'm Natalie. Lovely to meet everyone. I am the program director at BRINC, which is a global venture capital and accelerator firm. I look after all of our programs and initiatives on the sustainability side, which covers agri-food tech and climate tech. Through the programs, we both invest in early stage startups, but we run programs to support founders in the early stages of their growth. And we've built a network through which we plug our founders into to help them with early stages of defining their business, commercialization, getting their product right. The program is very tailored to the specific needs of each startup. And it's been a real pleasure to work with all these different startups, including Clearmeat, which we invested in 2021, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. And yes, BRINC has been very specific to sustainability, climate change, and various parameters which are interdependent on each other when it comes to either be fermentation or alternative protein. So, Natalie, I want to get perspective from you. We have seen in the last couple of years how alternative protein space has grown, evolved from both plant-based, animal-based, and fermentation sides. But in general, how do you see this space growing in the next 5 years, and what does the future hold?
Well, so the alternative protein space has undoubtedly grown a lot in the last 5 years, right? There's been huge changes. Say in sort of 2018-19, there was a huge proliferation of startups in the space, a lot of brand-driven plant-based CPG products without too much product differentiation. And back then also, you had a lot of early stage precision fermentation, cultured meat companies that were able to attract significant fundraising, having some only an idea, some only a small prototype at the lab without too much, again, differentiation. And throughout time, I think there was a very necessary shift from things being brand driven to more of a tech focus and more value add and differentiation. In terms of the future, the underlying need for food systems change hasn't changed at all. In fact, it has only grown, right, in this past 5 years. And in the future, the fundraising landscape has really changed as the segment has matured. I think for startups to really attract funding, they need to demonstrate a unique value proposition. For technologies like cultured meat, precision fermentation, this could mean differentiation through a different technical approach that allows them to scale production with more efficient unit economics and at less capex than their peers. These are really the numbers that people are looking at. And we see more and more companies like Clear Meat that are focused on a specific part of the value chain. We see more companies that are platforms or infrastructure, focus on, for instance, bioreactors or platforms that enables the entire ecosystem, for instance, around ingredients discoveries. So in the next 5 years undoubtedly will hold as much change as the last 5 as the segment matures and people are looking more towards upstream enablers and building the infrastructure required for alt protein products to really hit the market.
Yeah, it seems. I think yes, it's stabilizing. There are always hiccups in any journey, and when you speak of hiccups, lately we have seen that investments in this industries have declined. Even
Mm.
many startups have devalued themselves just for the sake of closing deals.
Mhm.
So, as an incubator, is such an investor behavior generic, or is it something that's too specific to alternative protein industry?
Mhm. I don't think it's specific to this space. In fact, we've seen many boom bust cycles, many bubbles before, right? There's no doubt that investments in this space have declined, but I would argue that it's somewhat of a necessary adjustment from a few years ago, where there were a lot of investors that were unfamiliar with the space, pouring money into alt protein without a fundamental understanding of the tech. They were expecting hockey stick returns that you may find maybe from a software company, only for them to realize at the end of the day, it's food, right? It's a physical product, particularly on the deep tech side, like cultured meat. There are real barriers around scaling, around scientific discovery, around unit economics, and it just can't be scaled like software. So to an extent, I believe this is part of a natural cycle. Earlier investments in the space were definitely inflated, but I think this current decline, as you say, has been exacerbated because there was such a bubble. We will see going forward, and we already are seeing at the beginning of some consolidation, M&A activity, people that are pulling their resources together, finding more creative ways to collaborate, people who are collaborating not only amongst themselves as startups, but with corporates, finding more capex lean way to grow. So I expect this activity will continue, and the winners will be the companies that are really able to come up with creative business models and really able to differentiate in terms of their technology, unit economics, and ability to scale.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will not put a blame on the investors because they are always looking to maximize their ROIs. But yes, I would also say that yes, there were some certain miscommunications and misunderstandings of this whole industry. And yes, I am also of the opinion that this is something very common to how
Mhm.
investors behave.
Mhm.
So, but coming back to the focus on companies like us and founders. So, this is something I also personally would like to understand, and I feel most of the audience is there are many founders in the audience and many people who are planning to start new companies. So what do you feel is the common mistakes founders do in the journey to cross this valley of death?
Hmm. I would say not so much mistakes, but important things to do is for founders to really decide on a clear approach and be able to articulate it early on. And when the market changes, be able to adapt very quickly. So for instance, founders in this space, given it's such a deep tech space, would have been beneficial if from the get-go, they decided to be asset light, CapEx lean, or on the other side, they decided to be vertically integrated, partnership led. And when the market really changed, they would really have to decide on what their unique value proposition is and stick to it. Common mistakes, hiring people too early. I think expanding the team too aggressively, with limited runway. Again, when the funding environment changes very quickly, that's a really common one. And I'd say another one in this space is you find a lot of founders who are very technical, driven by the science, by the product. It's quite good early on to get a commercial lens and understand how to properly attract the right partners, investors, so that the business is investable.
Yeah, but I think that is something very tricky, and the team plays a very vital role in the whole journey, the survival and how the outcomes will be there. Now, speaking of these interactions, these collaborations, and how the team is made, I have personally seen, my observation is this is something which is something personal to me, and people can disagree to that, and I want to know your opinion on that. Do you feel that there is a difference between how the Asian or versus the Western alternative protein industries behave? Are they different from founders' perspective, from investors' perspective, or how is there any difference, or is it same?
There's definitely a difference, as in every single segment. I would say the ecosystem in both regions are dynamic. I think Asian, Western, I would break Western down further, probably into North America and European. But Singapore in particular established itself very early as a hub for Asia, given it's the first place to have a clear regulatory framework to allow the sale of cultured meat. Undoubtedly, a lot more funding goes to North American companies, but that I think is intrinsically because the funding landscape in the two places are very different. But we've seen an emergence of companies in both these regions, and we've seen, again, like I mentioned, some of that consolidation happening in both these regions. And I hope to see, as an investor, more collaboration across these companies globally.
Yep, yeah, that's great. And from a BRINC's perspective, I would say BRINC being a collaborator between founders and investors. I think accelerators like you are better able to understand what the investors want and what the founders want, and how to create a collage between these two. And keeping again alternative protein sustainability and climate change, which was one of the talk of the town when alternative protein industry started. Apart from that sustainability and climate change, what is actually investors are looking for in startups before it can be generic startup before they be part of their journey?
First and foremost, in a startup, especially in an early stage team, investors are always looking at the founder and the founding team. At the early stages of a startup, when so much has yet to be validated, you're really looking at the quality of leadership, that they have a sound and defined approach, that they have thought through and mapped out their near and medium term future, I would say, but they're also able to pivot when necessary, and that they're resilient. They're looking for a real differentiation in either their commercialization approach and an unfair advantage there, or a real differentiation in the technical approach or product. And although I have to say investors may care about sustainability and climate change, but ultimately most investors will care more about the commercial viability and their return on investment when they're
I
looking
think
at a
I
startup.
think I think not only investors, founders also do the same line. So we are also looking about our return. So, but yes, I think investors and founders do play a very vital role in the whole journey, and the relation and association between these two bodies plays a very pivotal role in how the whole group will work. And yes, not to forget, companies like BRINC or setups like BRINC play a very important role in facilitating both these groups and creating a niche environment so that both are comfortable in how it goes. So yeah, I will not take much of your time. I know you're all occupied and we are running late today. So I would put it this way. Thank you, Natalie, for joining us today and giving you a brief about the whole brain concept and how sustainability, climate change, investor, talking on a different note, how it plays a very vital role. And we also have a session later on the day discussing about investors' understanding of this industry, why they are not investing, what are their next plans. So we have a 40-minute session on that, and we will obviously discuss these points also there. But yes, thank you again. And to the audience, let me put it this way. From a personal note, BRINC is something which we at ClearMeet experienced, and I would advise everyone out there, even if they are not starting a startup or not being part of the journey, just go ahead and visit the site of BRINC and understand what they are doing. Because I personally feel that the approach of BRINC is slightly different from what others are doing, and that is what is required for companies like us to survive and make sense out of it. So again, thank you, Natalie, and thank you for being part of today.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and for everyone in the audience, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you.